Hello.
Hello. We're
Uh,
so happy for you to join us tonight.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Harry.
Hello.
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 Hi.
Hello.
So that is all of these amazing young people who have been working with your testimony since September last year.
Yeah.
And they are really honoured and very, very privileged to have the opportunity to talk to you tonight. And I wondered, Harry, if you wanted to hear a little bit about who we are and what we've been doing. So we'll hand over to Neve.
Hi, I'm Neve, and we're a group of young people called the Sprunksters, and we join together on most Thursday nights, and we explore loads of different subject areas through physical theatre, and we work together and put all our thoughts and feelings and everything into performances that we love sharing with everybody else through movement and working together, which obviously we can't do now, but
Wanted to just tell you a tiny bit about how much your testimony has inspired us and how the young people have decided to take action in having been inspired by your testimony. So we're just going to hear from Lily, who's going to talk to us at first.
I think it was when you were talking about the fact that you had to wear sacks. People had to wear sacks and like were freezing when they were working. It really like made us think about the fact that people really struggle with clothing in the winter time, and that people were suffering so much. And that really made us think about like the kind of charity work we want to do because of your testimony and how we want to help people as much as we can. So we chose a charity called War Child to be a part of our pledge and to be our charity. They support young people who have gone through trauma and suffered because of war. So your testimony really helped us decide that.
Yeah. Well, it's very difficult actually to start talking about the trauma because the trauma's gradually built up. It got more severe and more severe until 1942, when the Holocaust really started. Then it actually hit you because we didn't know what's going to happen. We were lied, of course, by the Germans as well. They told them to take us on a small amount of a small suitcase to take it with us because we were going on resettlement. And of course, once we got into a place where we were herded into an open field, and when the train arrived, so they separated all the women from the men and the children, of course, as well. They didn't have a chance even to take the suitcases with them, so they more or less left them on where they were because they were rushed into the trains and to be herded. And of course the same happened to my mother, my grandmother, my sisters, and so it really was a terrible situation. And not only that, we were deposited on a field on about 18-20 miles from Krakow, and we got there. We were the first group to arrive there, and we could see this field was being. Some people were digging a trench right around that field, and we really thought that our end is going to come there, but of course gradually more and more people kept arriving on that field, and those trenches were used as latrines, on one side for men and the other side for women. So you can imagine it was really, the weather was very, very kind, but unfortunately the field that we were deposited on was damp, and whatever food we managed to bring with us went molded straight very, very, very quickly, so we couldn't use it. And we were on the field for 4 days, and it was absolutely horrendous. And so gradually, of course, you could see what's happening to our trauma, and we got used to it, unfortunately. We get used to situations that they arise, and we've got no choice. So, but that's what happened, actually. the first encounter I had with the Germans, although as we were driving, we could hear when from our town, when the selection took place, we only took men away. And as we were driving past the wood, we could hear an awful lot of shooting going on there. And a woman actually started screaming, shouting, and getting hysterical. And but it stopped the wagon, pulled that woman down and shot her. So be quiet, never put it down. And that's how it gradually actually built up. And whatever happened afterwards, we had no choice to accept it, but to accept it. So that's how it was, because we the build up for the trauma was actually very sudden. And from then onwards, of course, everything actually we just have to accept it. If you didn't accept it, you wouldn't survive the war. That's what happened to me as well.
I think the one thing that all of the young people really got from hearing your testimony was how young you were as well, and all of the trauma that you've just spoken about, the fact that you had to endure that at such a young age, and being younger than some of these young people here are back then. And so they've been inspired to raise money for a charity called War Child to try and support other children and young people who find themselves caught in conflict. Fern, would you be able to tell Harry what you guys have been inspired to do as well as raise money?
We made 40 care packages to send to the Destitution Fund at the Coventry Refugee and Migrant Centre, and specifically the destitute males at the centre. And so we set these packages up, everybody made one, and they had food and toiletries and lots of warm clothing to keep them warm and to provide them with things that they didn't have. And the part of your testimony when people had to wear like the clothing sacks, like Lily said, in the factories, that we felt inspired by that because we could provide something for people who needed it.
Well, actually, see how young I was. I was actually younger than my real age was, because my father, when the Germans issued new identity cards, he told out the children, he said, don't tell the Germans your real date of birth, tell them that you're 2 years older than actually you are. So I automatically became not in 1927 born, but 1925, so I was 2 years older. And so you can imagine that instead of being a 13, 14-year-old boy, I was all of a sudden became 16-year-old as far as the Germans concerned, because I wouldn't have been issued with a ration card, because if you couldn't work, you couldn't get a ration card either. So that was my father's thought actually of telling us to register as the older than what we are. But again, it's difficult to start talking about it, because you start living in a place together with all the other people, and they're in a similar situation. The food was indescribable. But as far as the food is concerned, there were no night shifts then, because we were working in the open air. They were working in building a railway junction, an embankment to a railway. And so the food was they had no food actually for the 12 hours when we were working during the day. The only food we got when we got back home or to the camp, we got some cabbage soup, and we got a lump of bread which had to last you for 24 hours. but but everybody's in the same situation as well, and it's not so much the food, although the food was very, very, but everybody's the same. But this living accommodation, the sleeping accommodation, they were absolutely horrendous, absolutely horrendous. You didn't have individual bunks. We were sleeping on platforms, 3 platforms on top of each other. And of course, we were infected by lice, bed bugs. It was absolutely, absolutely terrible, really terrible. You just can't describe it, what kind of life actually it was. One night, I think I told it in the testament as well, I just couldn't bear it any longer. I got up in the middle of the night and went over to the shower rooms, and of course I switched on the lights, and the Germans realized something was in the shower rooms in the middle of the night, and the Germans always walked with 2 Alsatian dogs, and they burst into the shower room, and I really thought they were going to let the dog loose on me. But the German was just taken aback and held the dogs back. And of course, the Jewish policemen were walking behind the Germans, and he turns around to them and he told them that this is das ist Sauberkeit, that is cleanliness. But when I realized later on that getting rid of the lice in the bed back from your body actually doesn't help you at all, because the vermin had much easier access to your body. So that was really dreadful. Anyway, but it's another thing, of course. It's what, another day, another hour for your life. But I was lucky. I was lying next to and I was slightly an older man, not much older, maybe 10 years older than myself, but he was a member of the Krakow Opera House, and he was in his while he was trying to fall asleep, he was singing some arias from various operas, and so that actually put me to sleep as well. But it was to me it was a novelty, of course, to listen to the various arias from operas.
Next up, Harry, we have the lovely Jade to tell you how else we've been inspired as well.
Yeah, so after watching your testimony, and we also got told by Mark and Sarah a little bit about your life after that, as a group, we really felt inspired by moments of darkness as part of our pledge was to celebrate our lives and the things that we can do and the things that we're given as a part of it.
Well, we had nothing to celebrate whatsoever.
I think the young people were really struck with your comment, Harry, when you spoke about going to Windermere and going from hell to heaven.
You can't compare to what it was like after in Windermere. Life was back to living, but for me to get to Windermere, I was terribly ill right at the end of the war, very, very ill. I couldn't, if the war would have lasted an extra day, I'm sure I wouldn't be alive. I managed to, when the Russian tanks broke through the gates onto the camp, I managed to drag myself out down from a bank, together with everybody else who was running out to the Russians, and but I soon turned back because I had to go back onto my bank bed, And from then onwards, I didn't remember anything that happened to me. I couldn't talk. I didn't know anything at all. I became practically unconscious. I probably was unconscious at the time as well. And of course, my luck was that we were lying there in the makeshift hospital as well, and I couldn't talk. And they must have been feeding me somehow. It wouldn't have been survived, of course. A week or 2 weeks before me, and I was on a train, and we were driving past a big railway junction, and lots of trains actually were parked one to another. And we somebody found out that the train parked parallel with ours had some food provisions. So everybody got off the train, got into the train next to it, and I managed to get onto a wagon. It was full of oats. So I tied my trousers and I put the oats down into my trousers. And when we arrived in today's resin, I found my friend with whom I was working on fitting those bombs with explosives. He was sitting on the ground there, and he was starving, because I was starving as well. But fortunately, I had those oats with me. So we made a fire, and we roasted the oats because we had a tin plate, and so that's what we did. We roasted some oats, and I was sent afterwards, and then we separated as well. So a few weeks later, he came looking for me because he knew I was there at the same place, and he found me, and he sat down next to my bed, and I still couldn't talk by then. But the nurse came over to him, and she asked him what was my name, and he gave her my name, and she bent over me, and she asked me whether I've got a sister called Sarah. And when I shook my head, then she said, I'm sure she's alive, because she was in a camp in Austria together with my sister. And the nurse was sent over to the Reichsstadt. And my sister was still there at that camp. But at least I had a name by then. But when we arrived in England, obviously they didn't know that what my name was, because although they assured me in Prague, don't worry, you're going on somebody else's name, but we sent notices as well to the people there in England. They should know to accept you. But when you arrived first of all, they thought that I was a stowaway. And anyway, soon we sorted it out later on then. So that's how I came to Windermere. But life in Windermere, of course, was absolutely it's beautiful place, a magnificent, beautiful place. And food, of course, was when you see the film from how the children actually pounced on the bread, taking bread into their pockets as well afterwards, because never thought that you see bread on the tables again like that. But we managed to become accustomed to normal lives as well. So it was completely different. Yes.
What do you want people to take away from listening to your testimony or taking part in Echo Eternal?
I don't know what I hope you take away from this, from myself as well. That don't give up hope. Don't give up hope. But in addition to hope, actually, you've got to remember as well that the worst thing you can possibly do is hate. If you hate people, you really don't know what it will lead to. Hate is the most, like the virus now here as well. The virus, it's eating into your soul, eating your life as well. And that's what hate is. So don't ever hate again. Don't do it. So if you ever hate it, I hope you never do. But that's the most important thing. That's what I say. Hope you take it away from this meeting today. And so don't remember, hate is the most dreadful virus actually. It's into you, and it spreads, and it gets worse and worse.
I don't think I could agree with you anymore, Harry. And that's something that everyone has spoken about, and about the idea of eliminating hate is so important. We've got I think one more question for you, and that is Abby. Abby, you have a question.
Hi. My question is, how does it feel to gift your testimony to projects like ours?
It's difficult to tell how, but you accept it, and it didn't do any heroics actually in order to survive it. Absolutely nothing, nothing at all. It just maybe a bit too meek, but we knew there's no choice at all at the time. No choice but to more or less submit to whatever actually comes to you. And the number of people actually who, thinking actually one particular incident we had before we went to work in the camps, we had to get out on what we call the Appellplatz, a big square, and we all be lined up. And the Germans were walking up and down, looking at us one another, and I'll come over there, come back again, and come back again. Others came along to look at us as well, and taking people out of the line and sending them off. And we knew exactly where they were going. They went meekly actually over there because they knew they were going to be shot. But there's one man actually standing next to me. He was an older man, not older, but he must be about 20, 25 maybe. He's tall. He spoke beautiful German. And he was taken up to the line, and he knew what's going to happen to him as well. And he just begged the Germans, look, I'm young, I'm old, I'm strong. And the Germans took his gun out and shot him there and then. But why I was left standing there, it just fate as well. But why it's just, I don't know what was preordained or it is just luck. It must be just luck, nothing else. Nothing else. So there's nothing you can do about those things here, especially if you're. That's what life is, and fate as well. But that man actually who went to his death, not with equanimity, but just begging for his life.
Thank you so much, Harry. Not only has it been an absolute privilege to have the experience to work with your testimony, and I know that every single young person that we've worked with on your testimony has been really moved to think about the change they can make in their own life because of the absolute resilience and kindness that you have shown throughout your experience and in your later life as well. And thank you for being so generous to come and share your experience again with us today. We are truly, truly thankful. And I know the impact that it has on these young lives. And I hope that it gives you some peace to know that these young people will carry your testimony in their hearts for the rest of their lives. And I really believe that you sharing your experience has changed them for good.
Just other one thing actually is, well, I don't hate anybody because I've learned actually what hate is. My revenge for the Germans would have survived. I survived and built up my own family here as well. active and productive family I've got. But that's my revenge actually upon the Germans was they wanted to destroy everybody, but fortunately they did not manage to do it. And thank you. I'm really privileged to have met such a wonderful group of people like yourselves.
And thank you so much, Harry. We've pledged, Harry, to celebrate life and to fill our hearts with love, and to fight hate. And that's because of you. So thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
And can everyone just say goodbye? And then thank you for your time, Harry. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.